Going back to PUBG sounds a bit weird really, because the game is still alive and kicking. As of writing this, the game has peaked at 717,000 players for the past 24 hours. And recently I've been going back and playing a lot of BF3 and BF4 because I still think those games have a lot to offer. And BF5, the base game, hasn't held my interest, and it probably won't until a new map appears. But when it comes to PUBG, I honestly couldn't tell you how much I played it when it first came out, and the amount of content that I put out on YouTube was huge. It was the go-to BR game. It was brilliant. I'd play PUBG with friends pretty much every day, even by myself in solos. It was brilliant and it was fresh, and it really felt like something new and exciting. And then of course, just as most BR games do, it got a bit stale. We wanted new maps, we needed new maps, and then when we got our first new map, well, the desert map, it wasn't very good. So we wanted different maps, we wanted better performance, both from the servers and from the client. And while improvements did come, they weren't always very fast. We wanted vaulting and a better animation system, and thankfully we got that. But then PUBG started to get some real competition. Fortnite arrived on the scene with their BR, and well, we all know how that story goes. And it's now not only one of the biggest BR games, it's also just one of the biggest games in the world ever, both in terms of how much revenue it brings in for Epic and also player numbers. Now, I played a lot of Fortnite at 1.2, uploaded a load of content on it. It's a brilliant game, but if you don't keep up with the practice and the meta, then you really fall behind when it comes to building, and that can end up being really frustrating. I think the skill and the meta in that game is 99% building and 1% aim and movement. Just my opinion and my experience. But then other BR games followed, like Blackout for example, Call of Duty's version of a battle royale, and when that released, I have to admit, binged on that for quite some time. It was great fun. I have to say though, it didn't really do a great job of keeping my attention and new content flowing. And more recently, we have one of the biggest challenges to Fortnite's success, and that's Apex, arguably one of the current crop of BR games that can actually have a chance of competing with Fortnite. I love Apex, I think it was a breath of fresh air, and I still play it reasonably regularly now, although I have to admit the Battle Pass was a big letdown. And then of course we've got Firestorm. I genuinely think Firestorm for BF5 is brilliant. The gameplay is one of the better experiences in a Battlefield game in my opinion, but I do worry that the player base is not where it needs to be for it to thrive, and of course the loot system desperately needs addressing. Also, if DICE, who have now taken over development, don't have a decent update cadence for it, it's going to die pretty quick. So this all got me thinking, PUBG, it was really one of the first BR games that I played a crazy amount of. I did try a bit of H1Z1 back in the day as well, and of course the armor mod, but PUBG was just a different experience that I really loved. After all this time though, I thought to myself, well, how does it really stack up? How will PUBG feel now after so long not playing it? And most importantly, experiencing and playing so many hours of so many other BR games since. I haven't played PUBG regularly for over a year though, I have to admit. I did play it at the back end of last year a little while when the new snow map for Kendi came out, but that was before Apex and Firestorm really took centre stage for me. So what's PUBG up to nowadays? Well, one of the most recent changes to PUBG is the addition of weapon masteries, and this is a brand new update that's aimed at improving the progression in the game. It's much needed, and it offers up free rewards for leveling up your in-game weapons. Every player can now earn a series of levels by dealing damage and killing enemies in the game. Killing more enemies and surviving for longer is going to level up your weapon at a faster rate, and at every 10 weapon levels you will be promoted to the next mastery tier. The further that you level this up, the better rewards you will get, in theory. To be fair, the weapon mastery screen is actually really good, and it shows you exactly how many players you've killed with that weapon, including knockdowns, damage dealt, and of course your overall weapon level. Alongside this, PUBG recently added weapon charms, something that I'm sure you'll be very familiar with if you've played or seen any Rainbow Six Siege. And these are little items, cosmetics ranging from support crates or the classic PUBG player model, weapon bullets, little pug dogs, and they can be attached to the side of your weapon to give it a slightly more unique look, something which offers up a pretty nice and simple way to set your weapon apart from others. And you can unlock mastery emblems and medals, which are a way of highlighting your weapon accomplishments. For example, killing 2 enemies in quick succession or defeating an entire squad by yourself. It's also worth noting that right now, the weapon mastery system is only available on PC, as it's still in development for PS4 and Xbox. So that's all well and good. But how does the most important thing, the gameplay, feel compared to the others around it right now? Well, first things first, when I jumped back into the game, I have to admit that it felt a lot smoother than I remembered it from 5 or 6 months ago. Performance was good and the animations were really smooth, especially jumping out of the plane. For the most part, I felt as though the movement wasn't too clunky, but I have to say that picking items up off the floor still felt quite awkward and delayed at times, which wasn't great. Also, maybe this is just me, but after playing so much Apex and Firestorm, it is quite annoying to have to manually equip attachments again. In Apex, attachments automatically go onto the required guns in your inventory, and in Firestorm, weapon rarities kind of replaced the attachment system and simplified it, but there's something quite annoying about having to remove all of the attachments from one gun to simply put them on another. Sure, you can remove them all with one click now, but even still, the mobile version of PUBG has an auto pickup. Would that not work in the base game too? I think it would. Maybe they're worried, I don't know, that it would dumb it down too much, and with me not being active in PUBG, I can't really speak for how the current player base feels because I'm not really part of that at the moment. Perhaps they prefer it the way it is, but when you come from other games, I guess you just notice really how frustrating and slow this can be. In terms of the gunplay though, it still feels brilliant. I played around mostly with the Kar98 and the assault rifles, and I have to say that even now the weapons feel great. Controlling a spray with one of the assault rifles or landing a headshot with the Kar98 is still very rewarding. I've been playing a lot of Firestorm recently, as you know, and I love the gunplay in BF5. The STG or the M1A1 carbine feel really nice when you land shots, and the snipers are especially tasty. That being said though, the PUBG gunplay definitely feels more skillful and challenging. A SCAR, for example, without any attachments is going to take a lot of skill to control, and if you wanted to spray down multiple enemies with, let's say, an M4, you're going to need some really good spray control, and that's a great thing in my opinion. Those players who can really land moving shots though with the Kar98 or spray down enemies from a distance with a rifle will really shine and stick their necks out above everyone else. I have to say as well that visually going from Firestorm to PUBG is a bit of a shock. It's not that PUBG is a terrible looking game, it's not, but Firestorm or BF5 in general is just gorgeous, and I don't think PUBG can match it when it comes to that. Not that it really needs to either, I suppose, but Battlefield players, remember, have been complaining about visibility since launch, and that could be in some part due to how detailed the environments and the maps are, so that extra fidelity does bring with it other issues and does not always improve gameplay, which arguably is the most important thing. Some elements of PUBG are also missing in other games, like Firestorm for instance. I still think the airdrops in PUBG are a little bit more dramatic than in other games. In Firestorm they're pretty frequent, so they aren't really a huge event, and in Apex they are contested quite regularly, but the movement speed is so much faster. In PUBG, you really feel like you're taking a chance by going for an airdrop, especially in squads. It's also really nice to have free look again because it's so useful for checking your flank and running forward in first person mode. And yes, I think that's more of a trait of the more hardcore tactical games like Arma. Really, that's where it's from, and I miss having that feature in Apex and Firestorm. But there are all sorts of other new delights in the game now that I actually didn't come across in my playtime, and those include a flare gun and new weapons such as the MP5. You can now also set your weapon's default firing state. Finally, that's something that I always wanted, and it means that you can head into the menu and tell the game what firing rate you want your assault rifle to start with when you pick it up, single, full auto, for example. So that means that you no longer have to pick up a SCAR and fire at someone only to realise that it's on single fire. Cosmetics have also ramped up too. There are all sorts of items now, from the charms I spoke about earlier to emotes, parachute skins, backpack skins. They've really upped their game in terms of the items that you can unlock and buy. Although even with all of that new stuff added, much like with Firestorm, you're still waiting around for so long to get back into a game if you die. You get into a lobby, that fills up, and then there's a 60-second wait, and then you can't jump out of the plane straight away to potentially land, die, and oh no, rinse, repeat. I think one of the things that Apex got so right was pretty much throwing you straight into a game with no pre-lobby and a quick drop, and I really like that. In conclusion, coming back to PUBG after some time away, I still think it's a good game, and I don't think I'm going to be rushing back to play it as much as I used to, but I do think that it offers up solid gunplay that sets it apart from the other BR games. I think as other BR games have released, its player base has definitely shrunk, but it's doing what it can to keep players around. We'll see how much more the game evolves in the next 12 months. And that's all for today, guys. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you still playing PUBG? Dropped it every now and again? How do you feel about the game? If you enjoyed the video, give me a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.